His wife had just died, and while he was burying her alone at the cemetery, his parents were at home throwing a birthday party with balloons, cake, and music. But what this man discovered about his perfect brother will shock you to your core. By the end of this story, his entire family was on their knees begging for forgiveness, but his response? Ice cold. This is the most savage family revenge story you'll ever hear, and the ending will leave you speechless. If you've ever been betrayed by family, you need to watch this. Hello family, before we start this intriguing story, we would like you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified once we drop new story. Also comment the time you are watching this and country you are watching from. The red earth of Lagos Cemetery felt cold beneath Zephyr's feet as he stood at the edge of the grave. Gray clouds hung heavy in the sky, matching the weight in his chest. His trembling hands gripped the rope that would lower his beloved Nalani into the ground forever. The wind whispered through the palm trees, but brought no comfort to his aching heart. Around him stood only strangers, neighbors he barely knew, a few co-workers who had come out of duty. Their faces were blank, unfamiliar, unable to fill the enormous space that should have been occupied by his family. Where were his parents? Where was his brother Vortex? The people who had raised him, who had promised to stand by him through thick and thin, were nowhere to be found. As he lowered Nalani into the earth, memories flooded his mind like a rushing river. Her bright laughter echoing through their small apartment in Ikeja. The way she would dance to Afrobeats music while cooking jollof rice. Her gentle touch when he came home tired from work. The quiet nights they spent planning their future together under the Lagos stars. All of it now disappearing into the red soil below. The whispers of strangers cut through his grief like sharp knives. Where is his family? Someone asked quietly. The question spread through the small gathering like wildfire in Harmattan season. Zephyr's cheeks burned with shame and anger. How could his parents choose to be elsewhere while their son faced the darkest moment of his life alone? Later that evening, Zephyr sat in his empty apartment in Surulere, staring blankly at his phone. The silence was deafening, no calls, no messages, no check-ins from his family. Nalani's favorite chair sat empty by the window, her books still scattered on the small table. Everything reminded him of what he had lost and who had abandoned him. A notification popped up on his screen. Someone had tagged his family in a video. Curious and hoping for an explanation, he clicked it with shaking fingers. What he saw next would haunt him forever. His heart shattered into a million pieces as the video began to play. There were his parents, laughing and clapping under colorful party lights in their family home in Victoria Island. Bright balloons filled the room, a large cake sat in the center of the table, and his brother Vortex stood grinning at the middle of it all. They were celebrating Vortex's birthday with friends and extended family, singing and dancing as if nothing had happened. The camera captured every moment of their joy while Zephyr had been lowering his wife into the ground alone. Each laugh felt like a dagger to his heart. Each cheer was a betrayal deeper than any wound. They had chosen balloons over his grief, music over mourning, celebration over compassion. The people who gave him life had abandoned him in death. Zephyr's hands shook as he watched his parents spin and dance, their voices raised in songs of happiness while he had stood in silence at the graveside. The video played on repeat in his mind, burning every detail into his memory. Their smiles, their laughter, their complete indifference to his pain, it was all captured in cruel detail. Unable to keep the pain locked inside any longer, Zephyr went straight to his parents' house in Victoria Island. Each step felt heavy with betrayal, each breath trembled with hurt and confusion. The decorations from Vortex's party still hung in the air, streamers, balloons, and the lingering smell of celebration that made his stomach turn. He found his parents in their spacious living room, still smiling and sipping drinks with a few remaining guests. For a moment he stood there staring, his heart pounding so loudly he thought they must hear it. The contrast between their joy and his grief was too much to bear. Finally he found his voice, shaking but strong. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "How could you choose a birthday party over Nalani's funeral? How could you leave me to bury my wife alone?" His mother, Empress, exchanged a calm glance with his father, Monarch. She took a sip of her palm wine and said softly, almost casually, "Life must go on, Zephyr. Vortex deserved his day." Those words hit him like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. The coldness in their tone, the complete lack of guilt or sorrow, cut deeper than any grief he had ever felt. Zephyr felt the world spin around him. He wanted to shout, to break something, to demand they explain their heartless behavior. But the words froze in his throat. He looked at their faces, faces that were supposed to love him, support him, guide him through life's darkest moments. All he saw was indifference. The people who had promised to be there when life fell apart had chosen celebration over compassion, their golden sun over their grieving one. That night, Zephyr sat alone in his apartment, replaying the confrontation over and over. Something had fundamentally shifted inside him. The pain was still there, raw and consuming, but beneath it grew something else, a quiet determination. He realized that crying and pleading would not change anything. His parents had shown their true colors. He began to think differently about his family, about loyalty, about love. For years, he had believed that blood was thicker than water, that family would always come first. But now he understood that family was not just about shared genes, it was about shared hearts, shared burdens, shared love. And his family had failed that test completely. Zephyr started paying closer attention to things he had ignored before. How his parents always favored Vortex, how they excused his mistakes while holding Zephyr to impossible standards. How they celebrated Vortex's successes loudly while quietly acknowledging Zephyr's achievements. The pattern had been there all along, but grief had opened his eyes to see it clearly. He thought about Nalani and how she had loved him unconditionally. She had been his real family, his true companion, his anchor in the storm of life. And while she was being laid to rest, his blood family had chosen balloons and cake. The irony was not lost on him. The person who wasn't related to him by blood had shown him more love than those who shared his DNA. A quiet fire began to burn in his chest. Not the angry fire of revenge, but the steady fire of resolve. He would not let their betrayal break him. He would survive this and he would become stronger. They had planted seeds of hurt, but he would grow them into something powerful. As the Lagos night settled around his small apartment, Zephyr made a silent promise to himself and to Nalani's memory. He would not spend his life begging for love from people who had already shown him where he stood in their hearts. He would not waste energy trying to make them understand what they had done wrong. Instead, he would channel his pain into purpose. He would honor Nalani by living a life of dignity and strength. He would show his parents through his actions, not his words, what real loyalty looked like. And if the day ever came when they needed him the way he had needed them, they would learn firsthand what it felt like to be abandoned. Zephyr looked at Nalani's picture on the nightstand, her beautiful smile frozen in time. "I promise you," he whispered into the darkness, "I will not let them destroy me. I will carry your love with me and use it as my shield. They chose Vortex's happiness over my grief, but I choose my own peace over their approval." He felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The hurt was still there, would probably always be there, but it no longer controlled him. He had learned a painful lesson about family, about love, about loyalty. And while the knowledge came at a terrible price, he would use it to build a better life for himself. The city of Lagos hummed outside his window, millions of people living their lives, chasing their dreams, building their families. Zephyr realized he was not alone in the world. Somewhere out there were people who would value loyalty over celebration, love over convenience, family over favoritism. He just had to find them or perhaps build that family himself. As he drifted off to sleep, Zephyr carried with him not just grief but also hope. Tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of his life, a life built on his own terms, guided by his own values, strengthened by his own choices. 3 weeks had passed since Nalani's funeral, and Zephyr found himself unable to shake off a nagging feeling. Something about that birthday celebration didn't sit right with him. As he walked through the bustling streets of Lagos, dodging Danfo buses and street vendors, his mind kept returning to the same question. How could his parents celebrate so freely if everything in their family was truly fine? The morning sun beat down on the crowded Balagan market where Zephyr worked as a textile merchant. His small shop, squeezed between a phone repair stall and a woman selling fresh fish, had been his sanctuary. But even here, surrounded by the familiar sounds of haggling customers and honking horns, he couldn't find peace. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vortex's grinning face from that video. During a quiet moment between customers, Zephyr pulled out his phone and started scrolling through social media posts from the party. He studied each photo carefully, looking for something he might have missed before. His parents looked happy, yes, but was there something forced about their smiles? Vortex seemed confident, but was there tension in his shoulders? A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Brother Zephyr, you look troubled," said Kemi, the elderly woman who sold groundnuts next to his shop. Her weathered face showed genuine concern. "Sometimes when we stare too hard at pain, we miss the healing that wants to come." But Zephyr wasn't looking for healing yet. He was looking for answers. That evening, as Lagos traffic crawled through the city like a slow-moving river, Zephyr made a decision. He would start asking questions, small ones that wouldn't raise suspicion. If there was something wrong with Vortex, something his parents were hiding, he needed to know. The betrayal of the funeral was bad enough, but if there was more to the story, he deserved the truth. Zephyr's investigation began quietly, like a detective in one of those Nollywood movies Nalani used to love. He started by visiting their family business, a small import company that brought textiles from China to sell in Lagos markets. His father Monarch had built the business from nothing, and both sons were supposed to inherit it equally. He told the company accountant, Mr. Adebizi, that he wanted to understand the business better, now that he was thinking about his future. The old man, grateful for someone showing interest, eagerly showed Zephyr the books. What he found made his stomach drop like a stone thrown into Lagos Lagoon. Money was missing. Not small amounts, but significant sums that had been moved around, hidden in different accounts, disguised as business expenses. The paperwork was messy, rushed, clearly designed to confuse anyone who might look too closely. But Zephyr had always been good with numbers, and the pattern became clear as he studied the records. Mr. Adebizi, Zephyr said carefully, these transfers to overseas suppliers, do you have the contact information for these companies? The accountant's face grew uncomfortable. Your brother Vortex handles all overseas dealings now. Your father said it was better to keep it in the family. The pieces were starting to fall into place like dominoes. Over the next few days, Zephyr made copies of documents when no one was looking. Bank statements, invoices, transfer records, each paper told part of a story that made his blood run cold. Vortex hadn't just been taking money from the family business. He had been gambling with it, making risky investments that had failed spectacularly, leaving the company drowning in debt. The deeper Zephyr dug, the more shocking the truth became. He discovered that Vortex had been living far beyond his means for months. The fancy car he drove, the expensive clothes he wore, the lavish parties he threw, it was all funded by money stolen from their family business. Money that belonged to their parents' retirement, to the workers' salaries, to the future of the company. Sitting in a small bucateria in Yaba, eating rice and stew while reviewing the evidence, Zephyr felt sick to his stomach. He had found records of Vortex's gambling debts at underground betting joints in Victoria Island. There were receipts from expensive nightclubs where he had spent thousands of naira in single evenings. Bank transfers to cryptocurrency schemes that had disappeared overnight, taking their family's money with them. But the most painful discovery was yet to come. Zephyr found email exchanges between Vortex and their parents, messages that showed they knew about some of the problems but had chosen to cover for him. They had been quietly moving money around, selling family property, even borrowing against their house to pay off Vortex's debts. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Zephyr, we haven't seen you since the funeral. Come for dinner this Sunday. Vortex has some good news to share about the business. The irony was bitter as palm wine left too long in the sun. They wanted him to come celebrate more of Vortex's success, while his brother was slowly destroying everything their father had built. Zephyr realized that the birthday party hadn't just been a betrayal, it had been a performance. His parents weren't just choosing Vortex over him. They were desperately trying to maintain the illusion that their golden son was perfect. They had celebrated his birthday with such enthusiasm because they needed to believe their own lie. They needed to convince themselves that covering for Vortex's mistakes was the right thing to do. The weight of this knowledge settled on Zephyr's shoulders like a heavy load of cement. His family wasn't just heartless, they were living in a house of cards that was about to collapse. And they had chosen to protect that illusion rather than support him in his grief. As the evidence mounted, Zephyr realized he held something powerful in his hands. Every receipt, every bank statement, every hidden transfer was proof that the brother his parents adored was built on a foundation of lies and theft. The same brother whose birthday had taken priority over Nalani's funeral was a fraud who had been betraying the family trust for months. But with this knowledge came a difficult choice. He could expose everything immediately, watch his family's world crumble and feel vindicated. Or he could wait, plan carefully, and choose the perfect moment to reveal the truth. The businessman in him, trained by years of negotiating in Lagos markets, knew that timing was everything. Zephyr thought about that birthday party video again, but now it looked different. He saw the strain in his parents' smiles, the way they praised Vortex just a little too loudly, the forced joy that came from people trying to convince themselves that everything was fine. They had been celebrating not just a birthday, but their desperate hope that their lies could hold their world together. The rainy season had started in Lagos, and as Zephyr sat in his apartment listening to the heavy drops on his zinc roof, he made his decision. He would not rush to expose Vortex. He would be patient, methodical, strategic. He would gather every piece of evidence, document every lie, and wait for the perfect moment. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Vortex. "Big brother," his voice came through cheerful and confident. "I heard you've been asking questions about the business." "That's great. Dad and I have been hoping you'd get more involved. Why don't you come to dinner this Sunday? I have some exciting news about a new investment opportunity." The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, Vortex was still scheming, still stealing, still lying. That night, Zephyr spread all the evidence across his small dining table. Bank statements, receipts, email printouts, photographs of documents. It looked like the workspace of a detective solving a complex case. In a way, that's exactly what it was. He was solving the mystery of his family's betrayal, uncovering layer after layer of deception and favoritism. He thought about Nalani and what she would say if she could see him now. She had always been the voice of reason in their relationship, the one who urged patience over anger, wisdom over revenge. Zephyr, he could almost hear her gentle voice, "When people show you who they are, believe them. But when you respond, make sure you respond with dignity." Using his phone, Zephyr began taking clear photographs of every document, organizing them into folders, creating a digital archive of evidence that could not be lost or destroyed. Each photo was like a bullet in a gun that he would fire when the time was right. But unlike a gun meant to destroy, this weapon would reveal truth and bring justice. He reached out quietly to some of Vortex's business contacts, asking innocent questions about projects and payments. What he learned confirmed his worst fears. Vortex had been promising investors returns he couldn't deliver, using new investors' money to pay off old debts, running what the Americans called a Ponzi scheme. The collapse wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. As Lagos settled into its nighttime rhythm outside his window, generators humming, security guards chatting, the distant sound of a church vigil, Zephyr felt a strange sense of peace. He was no longer the broken man who had buried his wife alone. He was no longer the abandoned son begging for his parents' attention. He had become something else, a patient hunter, gathering strength in silence, preparing for the moment when justice would finally be served. The birthday party that had wounded him so deeply would soon be remembered as the last moment of his family's false happiness. Every laugh they had shared while ignoring his pain would soon turn to tears of regret. Every celebration of Vortex's lies would soon become mourning for the truth they had refused to see. Zephyr carefully put away the documents, locked them in a small metal box and prepared for bed. Tomorrow he would continue his quiet investigation. He would smile at family dinners, nod at Vortex's boasts, and wait patiently for the perfect storm he was brewing to finally break over their heads. Sunday evening arrived like the calm before a thunderstorm. Zephyr dressed carefully in his best igbada, the one Nalani had bought him for their wedding anniversary. As he walked through the gates of his parents' compound in Victoria Island, he carried a leather briefcase that felt heavier than its actual weight. Inside were copies of every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence that would shatter his family's carefully constructed lies. The house was decorated beautifully as always. Empress had prepared a feast: jollof rice, grilled fish, plantains, and her famous pepper soup that usually made Zephyr's mouth water. But tonight, his stomach was tight with anticipation. The dining table was set for four, with the good china they only used for special occasions. Candles flickered in the evening breeze from the air conditioning. "Zephyr!" Monarch called out warmly, embracing his son like nothing had happened. "We're so glad you finally came. We've missed you." The irony wasn't lost on Zephyr. They had missed him for dinner but not for his wife's funeral. Empress bustled around the kitchen, humming contentedly, seemingly oblivious to the storm about to break over their perfect evening. Vortex arrived fashionably late as always, wearing an expensive suit that Zephyr now knew was bought with stolen money. "Big brother," he called out with his trademark confident smile, "ready to hear about the amazing opportunity I've found for our family business? We're about to become very rich." He threw his arm around Zephyr's shoulder, the gesture feeling like a snake coiling around its prey. As they sat around the table, sharing the evening meal like a normal family, Zephyr marveled at how easily they could pretend. His parents asked about his work, complimented his appearance, and spoke of family plans for Christmas. It was as if Nalani had never existed, as if her funeral had been nothing more than an inconvenient interruption to their perfect lives. As the meal wound down and Vortex began his usual boasting about business successes, Zephyr quietly placed his briefcase on the table. The sound of the clasps opening echoed through the room like gunshots. His family looked at him curiously, their conversations dying away as he began to spread documents across the polished wooden surface. "I think it's time you all knew the truth," Zephyr said calmly, his voice steady and clear. He placed the first bank statement in front of his father. "This shows money being moved from our company account to Vortex's personal gambling debts." Monarch's face went pale as he read the numbers, his hands beginning to shake slightly. Next came the receipts from expensive nightclubs, the evidence of cryptocurrency scams, the records of failed investments. Each document landed on the table like a bomb exploding their world of pretense. "Here's proof that Vortex has been stealing from the family business for over a year," Zephyr continued, his voice never rising, never wavering. Vortex tried to interrupt, tried to laugh it off, tried to explain. "Zephyr, you don't understand business. These are investments, opportunities. You're taking things out of context." But for every excuse he offered, Zephyr produced another document, another witness, another undeniable piece of evidence. Empress dropped her wine glass, the red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Her face crumpled as she realized the magnitude of what her golden son had done. "This can't be true," she whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Deep down she had known something was wrong. They all had. They had just chosen to ignore it. The room fell silent except for the sound of the air conditioning and the distant traffic from the Lego streets. Years of lies, months of deception, weeks of cover-ups, all of it laid bare on the dining table where they had shared so many family meals. The truth was ugly, undeniable, and devastating. As the evidence sank in, Zephyr watched his parents' faces transform. The confident smiles disappeared, replaced by shock, disbelief, and dawning horror. Their shoulders sagged under the weight of realization. Their hands trembled as they picked up document after document, each one confirming their worst fears. "Do you see it now?" Zephyr asked quietly, looking directly at his parents. "This is what you chose to celebrate while I buried my wife alone. This is the son you praised while abandoning the one who needed you. You chose to protect a thief, a liar, a fraud instead of supporting your grieving son." For the first time since Nalani's death, Zephyr saw the same hollow emptiness in their eyes that he had felt at the graveside. The same abandonment, the same betrayal, the same crushing weight of loss. They were finally tasting what he had swallowed alone for weeks, the bitter medicine of being left behind by the people who were supposed to love them most. Empress began to cry, not the gentle tears of sadness but the harsh sobs of a woman whose world was collapsing. Monarch sat frozen, staring at the papers as if hoping they would disappear. The pride that had once made them untouchable was gone, stripped away by the undeniable truth of their favoritism and blindness. "We didn't know," Empress whispered through her tears. But even as she spoke, more documents proved otherwise. Email exchanges showing they had covered some of Vortex's smaller debts, property sales to pay his gambling losses, loans taken against their house to maintain the illusion of success. Zephyr felt no satisfaction in their pain, only a deep sense of justice finally being served. "You knew enough," he said simply. "You knew enough to choose his birthday party over your son's grief. You knew enough to celebrate his lies while ignoring my truth. You knew enough to abandon me when I needed you most." Vortex, seeing his world crumbling around him like a house built on sand, fell to his knees beside Zephyr's chair. Tears streamed down his face as he grabbed his brother's arm, his confident mask finally slipping to reveal the desperate, frightened man underneath. "Zephyr, please," he begged, his voice breaking like a child's. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was trying to make money for the family, to make everyone proud. The gambling was just supposed to be temporary, to win back what I lost. Please, you have to help me. You have to forgive me." But Zephyr looked down at his brother with the same cold silence that his parents had given him at Nalani's funeral. The same empty space where support should have been. The same abandonment that had cut him so deeply was now reflected back to the person who had helped cause it. "You want forgiveness?" Zephyr asked quietly. "You want help? You want understanding?" He paused, letting the questions hang in the air like incense in a church. "Where was that energy when I needed it? Where was that compassion when I buried my wife alone while you celebrated with cake and balloons?" The change in the family was immediate and devastating. Neighbors who had heard the shouting began to whisper behind their gates. Friends who had celebrated at Vortex's birthday party started asking uncomfortable questions. The respect and admiration their family had enjoyed in the community began to crumble like a wall built without foundation. Vortex's confidence, his swagger, his ability to charm his way out of trouble, all of it disappeared under the weight of exposure. Every time he tried to defend himself, more evidence emerged. Every lie he had told was now visible in the harsh light of truth. The golden sun had become tarnished bronze, worthless and fake. As the evening dissolved into chaos, tears and desperate pleas, Zephyr stood up from the table and began packing his documents back into the briefcase. His movements were calm, deliberate, peaceful. He had accomplished what he came to do, not to destroy his family, but to show them the truth they had refused to see. His parents fell to their knees, begging him to stay, to forgive, to help them fix the mess Vortex had created. But Zephyr had already made his choice. He looked at them with the same steady gaze he had given Vortex, then spoke the words that would echo in their minds forever. "Life must go on," he said quietly, using the exact phrase his mother had spoken to him after Nalani's funeral. "I have to do what's best for me now, just like you did what was best for Vortex then." There was no anger in his voice, no hatred, no desire for revenge. Only truth, only justice, only the calm certainty of a man who had finally found his strength. He walked toward the door, each step lighter than the last. Behind him, the house filled with the sound of weeping, of regret, of consequences finally catching up with choices made in selfishness. But Zephyr didn't look back. He had learned that carrying other people's guilt was not his burden to bear. Outside, the Lagos night air felt fresh and clean. The city hummed with life, millions of people building families based on real love, real loyalty, real support. As he walked through the gates of his parents' compound for the last time, Zephyr carried with him not bitterness, but peace. Not revenge, but justice. Not hatred, but the memory of Nalani's love guiding him forward. He had survived the betrayal, uncovered the lies, and emerged whole. The family that had failed him would live with the consequences of their choices, just as he had lived with the consequences of their abandonment. But unlike them, he walked away with his dignity intact, his conscience clear, and his future unbound by their expectations. As Zephyr disappeared into the Lagos night, heading toward a life built on his own terms, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. Justice was coming for Vortex's crimes, just as truth had come for the family's lies. And somewhere in the city, new families were being born, families chosen by heart, not blood, families built on loyalty, not convenience, families that would stand together through both celebrations and sorrows. Moral lesson. This story teaches us that true family is not defined by blood alone, but by loyalty, love, and support when it matters most. When people show you who they truly are through their actions, especially during your darkest moments, believe them. Forgiveness does not mean accepting continued betrayal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who consistently choose their own comfort over your pain. Real strength is not found in seeking revenge, but in maintaining your dignity while letting truth and natural consequences do their work. The family that truly matters is the one that stands by you at funerals, not just at birthday parties. Blood may make you related, but loyalty makes you family. And sometimes the family you choose will love you better than the family you were born into. Remember, you cannot control other people's choices, but you can always control your response to them. Choose dignity. Choose truth. Choose yourself when others refuse to choose you. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos like this.